Introducing National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk programming that you can access 24/7. Check us out on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And for the premier sports talk experience, tap into our Roku channel. Start your mornings with Mac and Jack covering all the weekend sports action. Then pour a cup and enjoy all the sports you can drink on the Coffee and Sports podcast. At midday, talk sports from east to west on the Coast to Coast podcast. Followed at night by some hot girl talk with Prim and Proper Sports featuring Sonia Pearson. Talk boxing on the Gloved Fist. Yankee fans tune in for Start Spreading the News. And there's more on the College Sports Huddle and Sports Scope with Robert Butler. And that's just a sampling. There are 20 podcasts in all and 70 weekly shows giving us a 3.4-star viewer rating. To find us on Roku TV, search for National Streaming Sports on the Roku search bar. Click on the logo and you're in. For laptops, mobile phones, and tablets, download the Roku app. National Streaming Sports, live and on-demand sports talk for America.
Hi.
Okay, let me having some type of problems connecting.
Football season is here, and SeatGeek is my go-to for buying tickets. Now with SeatGeek, every single ticket is backed with their buyer guarantee. We've all had plans change, and when you can't make it to the big game, SeatGeek has you covered. They're the only ticketer that allows you to return your tickets ahead of the event for credit with SeatGeek swaps. So when things come up, I know that my tickets won't go to waste. So what are you waiting for? Download the SeatGeek app to maximize your possibilities and shop live events with confidence.
How are you?
I didn't want that one. Again?
I hear you fine.
I'm glad you do. I'm trying to get Zodiac.
Oh. Sorry about that. Commercials.
Well, it's not working. No. Welcome to the Blues Brothers Show. I'm your host, Mac. If they let me get this down. There you go. I'm your host, Mac, with my brother, the co-host, Big Bobby G. And we're here to cover all Giants, good and bad. And hopefully we got some good news for you, Bobby.
Yeah. No, it's this is one of my favorite days of the year. So this has been, it's always fun when free agency starts, and we'll talk about a great championship team that we had today. So I'm looking forward to that, and I love this day. And the Giants are a little active, so I'm sure we'll get to that a little bit later.
Yeah, we definitely will. Of course, we're going to talk about the 1990 Super Bowl, O.J. Anderson getting the MVP of the Super Bowl, the two wide receivers, Jeff Hostetler. I think Sims got hurt. That's why he didn't play. And of course, we'll talk about that defense that they had. Great defensive plan. The Bills almost came back. The Jim Kelly to Thurman Thomas almost brought them all the way back, but they missed the pull kick to the right, Bob.
Yeah. It's funny because, when we'll get, talking about the 90 season a little bit, and, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but all I remember for 2 weeks in a row was being on the floor on the NFC Championship game and watching and hoping the Giants make a field goal. Then the following week, because if you remember, there wasn't 2 weeks in between because of the war that just started in Iraq. So the NFL decided to play the game, just as normal, the following week. So there wasn't the normal 2 weeks in between the championship games and the Super Bowl itself. And back on the floor the following Sunday, hoping he misses the field goal. But we can get into more of that as we're going along. And I just remember that like it was almost yesterday that I was doing that. That was fun. That was a fun season.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Jeff Hostler did a real good job backing up Phil Simms. He was a running quarterback. He made some key third down plays. Threw a touchdown, I think it was to Baker, if I'm not mistaken.
It was third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, I think it was in the Super Bowl. To me, the season itself, though, because I know we're both huge Phil Simms fans, and to me, that season is bittersweet because Phil had the Giants at 10-0 going into the Bills game. Now, we know we're going to play. We didn't know at the time, but we're going to play the Bills, a couple months later because this is the 11th game of a 16-game schedule. So between the playoffs, I think it was 2 months later, we'll be playing the Bills again. Phil fades back, doesn't really get hit, but ends up getting his foot caught in the turf and breaks his ankle. So why is it a bittersweet season to me? Right. I truly believe that Phil would have won that Super Bowl as a quarterback, and because of that, in the time he played in the 80s, early 90s, he would be in the Hall of Fame right now. I truly believe that if he had got that second Super Bowl, and I think there's an argument to be made, and I know it's been made that that Phil that Phil deserves to be in, and I know we've had the conversation. He was 10-0 in 1990. He was having an outstanding year, and people and about that team, they only had 14 turnovers the whole season. I believe that's still an NFL record for the least amount of turnovers in a season. So Phil was a very efficient quarterback. We ran the ball a lot with O.J. Anderson. We ran the ball. We talked about Dave Meggett last week. He was in the backfield also. Rodney Hampton was a first-round draft pick of the 90 draft, and he had a great year. He also, incidentally, ends up getting hurt that season. So, two of our best offensive players in that year both went down, and we still went on to win the Super Bowl. But Rodney was having a great year. We were lucky to have O.J. Anderson on our team. But that was you want to talk about that defense. People forget, I think, how great the 1990 defense was. It's one of in 2007, ESPN ranked the 1990 defense. I could be wrong. It's 6th or 7th best all time. So they're up with some really good company. When you look at the defense, and I happen to have some of the players here, and it's interesting to me because we're now Harry Carson retires, so he kind of was I think the heart and soul of our defense through the 80s, and we're kind of going through a transition period now when we hit 1990. Pepper Johnson is a starting inside linebacker. And Steve Diassi, who becomes a long snapper for us for a long time, is actually the starting left outside linebacker on that team, along with Lawrence Taylor. And of course, Carl Banks is still there too. So there was kind of Steve Diassi was the inside linebacker, and we had Banks and we had Taylor on the outside. So we were kind of going through a transitional period. We didn't know at the time Lawrence would be gone in 3 years. Pepper would have a good career, not a great career for the Giants. And what was cool about that team too, in the defensive back field, we picked up Emerson Walls from he was released by the Cowboys. Dave Durrison as a safety, who was on that great Bears defense in 1985. He's a starting safety for us. We talked about Mark Collins in the past, and he's on the other side. But that was a transitional type of a defense. They were a great, very, very good defense. They hit you hard. And we'll talk about the Bills game in a minute of the Super Bowl. You know, they didn't really hit you. They punished you. I mean, when I was watching some of the highlights of that team today, I forgot how good they really were and how swarming they really were, and really what they did to people. You know, you look at the 1990 playoffs, and they beat the Chicago Bears, a very good Bears team, just 5 years removed from a Super Bowl, 30-3. So I mean, that was a good team.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you got to give credit to, well, first let's talk about Phil Simms. When I interviewed him, I asked him, I said, if the starting quarterback versus Buffalo, would the score have been, more? And he said, probably, because they played a zone defense that was, that he threw really well against. So, it wouldn't have been that close, is what I'm saying, Bobby.
So you're saying if Phil was a starting, you're saying if
Phil
was
had a very good offense, as we know.
Okay. So I'm saying, so you were saying if Phil started that game, it wouldn't have been 20-19. We would have scored more than 20 points. You're feeling.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I can see that. Phil was having a really good year. He didn't turn the ball over at all. I mean, you watch some of the highlights of the 90 season in the quarterback play. It was his best year. He that was one of the years. Well, he made the Pro Bowl that year. It was one of his best seasons that he's had as a Giant. And it's funny because he built on that, and we can talk about the next few seasons, but he built on that for the next the next 4 years. He would play at really an all-pro level before the Giants released him and decided to move on. That's why when I look at the 90s season, I think of it as a transitional season from the 80s, where we had a very competitive team, made the playoffs a lot. We've discussed in the past how we probably should have got more than 2 Super Bowls out of the gang we had. Chicago Bears, I know, can make the same claim because I've heard them say it. A lot of their players have said, the 85 season, we should have got a couple more. We feel we were good or good enough to win more championships than just the one that they won. And I think the Giants were good enough to win more than 2 championships from that 86 to the 90 for that 4-year span. And really, you almost go into the 93 if you wanted to, because the Giants were still in the playoffs and making a run at it after the 90 season. So I really, unfortunately, we didn't achieve that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at the 1986 season, when it was the Big Blue Wrecking Crew and Harry Carson was the captain, I mean, they were just dominating, Bobby. I mean, can you imagine what they would do to that Buffalo Bill offense?
Oh no, that would have never been. I'm not, and Jim, and we got to remember too, that Buffalo Bills offense that scored only 19 points, they were kind of reminiscent of, years later going up against the Patriots. They're scoring 30, 35 points a week, as the Pats did in the 06 season, in the 07 Super Bowl. So, I mean, that was a very, very prolific offense that, Bill Belichick had an outstanding game plan. We had really good players, really on both sides of the ball. I remember thinking and thinking about the Giants' offensive line that year, and they were young. You had Eric Moore, left tackle, and Jumbo Elliott would come in too. So he was his backup, and people tend to forget that. You had William Roberts at left guard. Bart Oates was kind of the elder statesman. He was kind of a carryover from the 80s. Again, a transitional, as I said, type of offensive line now with Bob Cratch. And we talked about Doug Riesenberg in the past. Now, at tight end, Mark Bavaro was not quite the Mark Bavaro he was in 86. He had a lot of knee issues. And this was the year that he barely practiced. I mean, he would Parcells would just roll him out there on Sunday. And that was his practice and his game. But that was a very, very – and I remember thinking to myself, holy cow, we have a great offensive line for 10 years now. And it didn't really – it for some reason, whether it was free agency, I think it was Plan B free agency back then they called it, and people left. But it was a very, very young and good offensive line, where an offensive line where Jumbo Elliott couldn't even start. Shows you how good that offensive line, because he was a hell of a ball player. But that was I think anyways. And you had Maurice Carthon as the traditional fullback on that team, and of course Otis Anderson was the running back. That was a very good offense, and we'll talk about Stephen Baker and Mark Ingram, who are the starting outside wide receivers. You look at their stature, if you will. You have Baker at 5'8", and you have Ingram at 5'10". It's a wonder why Phil Simms wanted to throw to the 6'5" Mark Bavaro. I don't want to throw to him too. You could probably find him a lot easier.
Right. And what a couple plays they made during the Super Bowl too. In the Mark Ingram catch, the individual effort that he put into it. I mean, even Bill Parcells actually broke down the play.
It's years later, because during that particular run too, we had a guy named Tom Coughlin who was our wide receivers coach, and Tom talked about that play, and he was with Parcells, and he said, when the night before the Super Bowl, I drew that up on the blackboard for Mark, and he did it exactly like I told him to do it. So that was that was what, like a little tidbit of that interview that Coughlin and Parcells did, years later after Tom's success in New York and everything. But the Giants had a good coaching staff too. You look at the coaching staff: Romeo Crennel, defensive line coach; Al Groh. These are going to be future head coaches. Linebackers coach. Charlie Weiss was the assistant special teams coordinator. So all these guys are going to move on to be. Well, I forgot somebody. A guy named Bill Belichick also was on that staff. That was a heck of a staff. When you look at some of the successes that a lot of these guys had later on in their career from the Bill Parcells coaching tree.
And that's why when I kind of get in arguments with people who's the best head coach, they say Paul Brown. He was a great coach. There's no doubt about it.
Sure.
But the coaching tree of Bill Parcells, is unsurpassed, Bobby.
Oh, the success that Coughlin and Belichick had is enough to those two alone. Never mind that you also had head coaches either the collegiate level and or the NFL level. A lot of head coaches came out of that coaching staff, and they had a great game plan to keep Jim Kelly on the defensive side to keep Jim Kelly's offense off the field. And they were and the fourth quarter, it was kind of reminiscent of the first quarter. And I don't know, I'm jumping around here a little bit. What Eli did to the Patriots in the first quarter with a 10-minute drive is what really Hostetler did in the fourth quarter with a 10-minute drive to kind of keep Jim Kelly's offense off the field. It was an outstanding game plan. And I know you mentioned Mark Ingram's play. A play that was also made in that game that I think some people do forget was made by Jeff Hostetler. Now, the play ended in a safety, but Bruce Smith grabs his arm, and his arm is not even a foot away from the football. And typically that's a fumble. And if he fumbles that ball there, there's a bunch of Bills hanging around right there. And you don't see a lot of blue jerseys there, but you do see a lot of white jerseys there. And I always wonder if he fumbled that ball, which he's able to bring it into his other hand, dig it into his left hand, and the Bills got the safety. But for us, it was a great play because he didn't fumble the ball. I think that's an unsung play in that game.
It's a great point. So let's get to some of today Giant news. As Jay Train mentions in the comments, Paulie Debo.
Debo, yeah, Paulson.
And I think, is he from the Bengals?
Nope, New Orleans Saints. He's played in 50.
Okay. That's
52 games, 51 starts, or 50. So 51 games with 50 starts. The Saints play a lot of zone, which we know that our defensive coordinator Sean likes to play zone, so it's a good fit for that particular piece. I think he's 6'1", around 200 pounds. He's only 25 years old. I think we were just talking about right before we went on the air. And the thought going into free agency that this young man would maybe just because he's coming off a broken tibia, but that shouldn't be a problem. He'll be ready for camp. He's going to be ready for – I think he'll be ready for OTAs. But he's coming off a broken tibia. A lot of people speculated that maybe he'd come back for a one-year deal, kind of a prove-it deal, and then cash in next year in free agency. That didn't happen, so he signed a $54 million contract for 3 years with the Giants. So it's a great start. They also signed a defensive lineman, Harris from Seattle. He's Roy Robert Harris. He's a 9-year vet. They've got him on a 2-year contract for $10 million. So both these signings are very good. He'll be a rotational player. He'll help out Dexy in the middle of the line there. And just looking at Paulson's contract, also that puts him around 13th or 14th highest paid cornerback. So the Giants shopped on the higher end of that, but I think it's a good deal for the Giants. And maybe this will make Banks a better player. I don't know.
I do too. Banks really didn't have a bad year, Bobby, last year.
No, he didn't have a bad year. He had an up and down year. The coaches benched him for the lack of effort, so there was that. And again, we've talked about Corey Webster being benched. So we've been down that road. We understand that. Sometimes the benching is good for a player. As I said last week, sometimes it's not, depending on who the player is. It didn't seem to hurt Banks. He didn't have a terrible season, but he was called out a couple times by the coaches in the effort that he was putting out. That's the only that's kind of the only blemish on his on this past season. You know, he was our number one corner, so he had to follow the number one receiver of the other team around. This signing today will maybe help. Maybe both can stay, either the left or the right, settle into that position, and whoever's coming at him is coming at him. That's why I think the Giants will probably do this. And don't be surprised, and I'm not going to be surprised, if the Giants don't take a corner third round, fourth round of the upcoming draft too. Because I don't think they're done at corner yet. And I don't think they're done defensive tackle yet either. I anticipate them taking a really deep defensive tackle, draft this year, taking and I think taking a high one, second round, third round. You probably get a good one, Mac, in the fourth round too. But I do anticipate the Giants drafting a cornerback and a defensive tackle, even though what they've done today. And I'd like to see them. And I don't know if you speculations. Will Fries at guard. We need a right guard. He's the Colts right guard. 27 years old, young. He's kind of a tier 2 type of free agent. He's at the top. He's at the top of the food chain when it comes to guards. But I like to see the Giants maybe take a swing at him sometime today, tomorrow, or I don't know, Wednesday, depending on what happens. And I hear our friend Aaron Rodgers is flirting with the Pittsburgh Steelers now.
Yeah. So, were you surprised? Let's stay with the Giants.
Okay.
So the Giants sign Danny DeVito to a contract. They sign a punter, which he is a good punter. There's no doubt about that.
Yep. What they call him, the Australian Hammer, I think, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you
and
surprised?
They sign, of course. Jesus.
You're lagging on me. Sorry.
And they sign the punt.
Are you? I think I lost you for a second there, Mac. I think I lost you for a second.
Bobby's just sitting there with a dumb smile on.
Okay, now I hear you. You're back. I lost you. Now you're back. I see you now. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
So what did you say, Bobby? I missed that whole thing.
Yeah, no, I was just you were just lagging on me there. Can you hear me right now? I don't know if it's my feed or your feed.
Yes.
Okay. Because you're frozen. When I'm looking at you, you're frozen right now.
Yep, I can.
Here you are. I think. Technical difficulties here. You seem to be back now. Okay, cool. I think you're back. No, so the last thing we were talking about was the signing of the kicker. And what I was going to say was when I was surprised, and we talked about it last week, that we didn't restructure any contracts to free up some more money. I don't know. I thought we might, extend Burns and extend Dexy, two youngish players that they're going to be around for a while, and push some of that money forward, as we've been talking about, like a lot of the other teams do. And the Giants could have probably got another 25 million in cap space. Sorry about that. 25 million in cap space. So that's what I was thinking.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. Justin Fields signs a contract with the Jets.
Yeah.
You
surprised?
3-year contract. I think his second year is guaranteed. A little bit.
You need a quarterback. Where does that leave the Giants now? Because the quarterback mentioned, another thing I mentioned too was Rodgers is flirting with the Steelers now. Where does that leave the Giants? Wilson doesn't do anything for me. I don't now we're shopping like with other people's quarterbacks who didn't work out, whether it's Mac Jones or now we're down to that group of quarterbacks. If they're not strong, Russell Wilson would be.
I'll tell you what I think. I'll tell you what I think they're going to do.
Okay.
And that prediction is right now. They're going to sign Cam Ward as their starter from day one.
So you think they're going to trade up with Tennessee to get that first pick?
Yes.
Okay, so what it would cost? It's not as bad as people think it is. Now it depends on who's going to be if there's other suitors, which there could be. But maybe Cleveland wants to jump up and get him because they have the second round pick. I know what Cleveland's plans are. It would cost the Giants their third round pick this year and their second round pick next year. And believe it or not, they think that will get it done. We wouldn't lose our second round pick. Now, I think we'll probably have to throw in our third round pick this year, too. So I think it's going to cost us first, our third, and a second next year. It's not terrible for your franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
Could you live with that?
He's going to be our franchise quarterback if we get him, right?
Yep. I've seen people give up a heck of a lot more than that.
Yeah.
And that's if Tennessee doesn't want him, because Tennessee needs a quarterback. Now, let's not forget Tennessee needs a quarterback.
They love to reach for quarterbacks, right?
Yeah. Everyone does. They're always overdrafted.
Yes. So Shedeur Sanders, the second round, maybe Jackson Dart, who the Giants have talked with. Yeah. Quinn Ewers will probably be there in the second round too.
Yeah.
If somebody wants him. I I mean, who are you going to pick up? Jimmy Garoppolo? Come on.
No, he actually just re-signed with someone today, so he's off the market. But I'm glad you mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo's name because that's where we're shopping now. If Rodgers does go to Pittsburgh, like the rumors are, I haven't seen him sign there yet. There's been rumors all day about him going there. But if he does go there, then we're in the Zach Wilson market. That's the market we're in then. And I mean, I don't know. Is Jack happy that they got Justin Fields?
No, I mean,
have you talked to him?
I say he is. Yeah, I did this morning. I say he is. They need a quarterback. Of course, he can run with the ball. It gives them another running back out of the backfield. And he can throw the long ball.
Right. How about Sam Darnold going to Seattle? I was really kind of on the outside chance of maybe that would be the only that's what Joe Shannon said before free agency started. He was going to shoot for the stars. That would have been a shot for the stars, in my opinion. He didn't do that, obviously. Now, where does that leave the Vikings?
Yeah,
out?
I agree.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, John.
I agree.
Sorry, Matt.
I mean, that's all right. John Mack, it's all the same. So, I was surprised that he went to Seattle, but I mean, Geno Smith left. I mean, that was probably their only choice at a decent quarterback.
Where does that leave the Vikings now? Daniel Jones is going to be their starter?
Yeah.
They're just going to go with, the rookie, the second-year player now.
I think they're going to start Daniel Jones, and then maybe half season or maybe at the end of the year. I'm not really sure. I mean, Daniel Jones is okay. He had, if he wasn't injured all the time, I think his career would have been better. He did have a good rookie year.
Yeah, a great rookie year.
And, of course, he did beat Minnesota in the playoffs. So, I mean, he's got something about him.
Well, the Colts are rumored to be flirting with Daniel Jones. Where does that leave the Vikings? If he decides to go sign with the Colts. Now, he'd probably have a better chance. I think if he goes signs with the Colts, he might be their starter. Because their quarterback who they drafted a few years ago, a couple years back, is not panning out the way that they had hoped he would.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be a landing spot for Jones.
In fact, every quarterback they have pretty much draft.
And I hear it,
I think Jones got better receivers than
Peyton Manning used to play for the Colts.
And that's
I remember when Peyton Manning used to play for the Colts, and then he retires, and then they got Andrew Luck. I was like, this is the luckiest team I've ever seen in my life when it comes to quarterbacks, because they went from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck, and they've been kind of floundering since Luck decided to really, for whatever reason, decide I don't want to play football anymore. He's still playing at a very high level, and he decided, well, I don't want to do this anymore.
Well, he was getting hit constantly, Bobby.
Yeah, well, yeah, true. And I know he had a couple of concussions, so maybe physically he decided maybe I'll get out of it while I still have my brains.
Yes, exactly. So, Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
Myles Garrett requested a trade. He wanted to leave. The Browns offer him $40 million a year to be the highest defensive lineman in the history of the NFL.
Right.
So now he stays.
They must have a plan. They must have said, "This is our plan. This is kind of what scares me a little bit when it comes to Cam Ward, because they have as much resources as we do to move up to the number one place, that spot, to get Cam Ward if they want to. So maybe they pitched. I'm just speculating, obviously, but maybe they pitched to him, we're going to put a package together. We're going to go up and we're going to get the best quarterback in this draft. And if that doesn't happen, it's okay, because then we're going to take the second best quarterback in this draft. And so because the Titans need a quarterback. So when the Giants come to the third pick and both Sanders and Ward are gone, and if I'm the Giants, I am praying that someone wants to come up and take one of those two defensive players, either Abdul or Hunter. I'm praying that someone that's maybe 10, 12, 13, 14 wants to come up. I could get myself an extra second rounder. Then maybe I take the quarterback from Ole Miss with that first round pick, but I'm taking him with the 12th. I'm just using numbers. Taking him with the 12th or 13th pick, and I've got 2 second-round picks in my back pocket now. I mean, if I'm the Giants, that's what I'm – and if the Giants wanted to, and this is even crazier, if you want to go really crazy with this trade-down stuff, which Bill Belichick became a master at. It's how he built the Patriots. If the Giants wanted to, they could even trade back a little bit more, pick up another couple picks, and maybe still get Dart. I mean, I'm just speculating here. But with those two players off the board, I mean, the Giants could stay there and they could take the outside linebacker. They could take the cornerback. We just signed a cornerback in free agency. I said they're probably going to draft one anyways. But do we draft Hunter after I just paid somebody $54 million? I don't know. Maybe we do. Maybe we trade back. I don't know. Maybe they take the outside linebacker. But I just played Burns $100 million.
I think there would. Excuse me. I think because of the injury, the foot injury to the defensive end, there is a little concern there.
Yeah.
So I think they would take Travis Hunter.
And then what do I do with Banks? What do we do with Banks? Do we trade him? We look for a trade partner? Maybe that's a way to, because I got Hunter now, and I just signed my $54 million cornerback in free agency, the first day of free agency. I mean, I know you don't. I know you always could use three real good corners, but now I have 2 first rounders and I have a second round. Or I guess he was a third round pick from the Saints. So I have 2 first rounders now and a third round pick in my defensive backfield, which is not bad. It's not to say it's a bad thing, but I need help in other places too, though. I mean, I just think I understand you have the draft falls the way the draft falls. I just would trade back if I could. You might not be able to because you need a partner to trade.
Right.
Just because you want to trade back doesn't mean you can trade back. And you don't want to just give up a bag of balls for the third round draft pick either. You want something that you're going to be able to use. Maybe it's a player, I don't know, and a draft pick. But I think the Giants would want to trade back.
I think, Yeah, we do have 2 cornerbacks already. Travis Hunter, I mean, he could play anywhere, right? He could play slot. He could play
receiver. Yeah.
on the end with, tight end. So maybe play safety, Bobby.
Maybe that's a thought. Never thought of it. Maybe.
Travis Hunter, I think is a generational talent.
I agree.
I think he probably be a future Hall of Famer.
I agree.
I don't know if he's better. I don't know if he's better than Deion Sanders or not, but he's a close second, no doubt.
Yeah, he'd be up there probably. I think when it's all said and done and calls it a career, people might compare him to like a Sanders type of player. Sure, I could see that.
Yeah, or Revis Island, where he was a shutdown cornerback.
Right. It's just I just don't know if I'm just using the scenario now that both quarterbacks are gone. We're looking at 2 very, very good defensive players. One's being compared to Marcus Parsons. Another one's being compared. You compared him to Revis. So really, there's really not a bad choice here for the Giants. There's foot injuries a concern. Obviously, he's a young man, though.
Not at all.
You think he'd be able to come back from that? That's why I think the Giants will have a partner because you said he's a generational player, and if I can pick up an additional 2nd-round pick, take my quarterback I'm really not. I don't understand why he's not being talked about more from the combine. I mean, Kurt Warner couldn't say enough great things about him at the combine last week. I'm talking about Dart here. You look at his statistics. He broke Eli Manning's records at Ole Miss. He's the first team all SEC for his position. That has a lot of weight with me. Arguably the best division in college football, and and his stats are just unbelievable. I mean, and Warner saying, "Oh, he can make all the throws." The way that he was just gushing about him at the combine, I don't know. I don't know why he's not being talked about more in the same breath of the other 2 guys. And the kid from Alabama is actually in front of him.
So you also got Shedeur. I don't like Milroe.
I know. He's more of a project, too. He probably should have stayed another year in college. But he'd be more of a project. That's why you would need maybe an Aaron Rodgers to kind of mentor him, or somebody who's been around the block a few times that can teach him the ropes of the NFL and the quarterback position.
Right. So Shedeur Sanders, people are saying he's broke. Of course, he gets that from his father, Deion Sanders. And if you're going to draft him, say New York drafts him, say the Giants draft him.
Yeah.
Every time they misuse him, guess who's going to be over there scrutinizing every time they screw up?
Right. I don't know. The Giants are I think a few weeks back when I was on the show with yourself and Jack, and he called the Giants, higher, the management team more of kind of a what's the word he used again? I wouldn't stuck up's not the right word I'm looking for here. Well, they're not going to be able to
conservative.
Conservative, I guess, is a good word. Yeah, they're a very conservative organization when it comes to outside chatter and things of that nature. And he was, I kind of agreed with him that, the Maras and the Tish, I don't know if they're going to want to have that extra baggage. They might. That goes along with that because of what you just said.
I don't know, Bobby. I don't think Sanders will be the type of person that the Maras want around.
Yeah. And I hear that at the combine, the interviews weren't as great as people would like them to be. Kind of came off as I'm all that in a bag of chips, I guess, is an old phrase I used to use when people thought they were all that. Yeah. He came across as being all that in a bag of chips.
Right. Nothing like an old phrase. I
like bags of chips too, so there's always that.
Yeah. So Mike Tomlin, the calls for him fired they have kind of calmed down for right now. But if they don't make, say, the championship again, those calls are going to heat right back up.
I agree with that. Even though they're always in the mix, they're always there. Sooner or later, though, it could even what's so funny about that situation when you think about it? It could even be Mike Tomlin who says, "I need to step away from this for a little while." Maybe it's not even management that says it. I need just to kind of decompress, step away, go on TV, be a broadcaster for a little while, talk about what the games are, and then maybe reboot and maybe re-enter the coaching fray, if you will. I wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't even management's idea. It might be his idea. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I think it might be. That's a lot of hours, Bobby.
Oh my God.
Head coach.
I forget the head coach. He was a quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, very successful head coach at Florida State. Oh goodness gracious, I can't think of his name. He became the head coach at Washington, and he couldn't get out of there and get back to college football fast enough. Steve Spurrier. You remember that when he came to Washington? And he kind of, this is not for me. He likes to play golf, likes to have kind of an actual life outside of football. And when you're a head coach in the NFL, you are all in. Remember him? He couldn't wait.
Yes, Steve Spurrier.
Yeah, couldn't wait to get back to college football. He ran back. I bet you he didn't even unpack all of his clothes from his suitcase that he left in the trunk. That's how bad he wanted to get back to college football before he stepped on the Washington Redskins practice field.
I believe it too. So the Vikings are re-signing Aaron Jones to a 2-year, $20 million contract, including $13 million guaranteed.
Wow. Backup money? I don't think so. Could be. I mean, It's not breaking the bank, but it's pretty high for a backup. Guaranteed $13 million, you said?
Mm-hmm.
That's I don't know, it's starters money, but it's not backup money. It's kind of an in-betweener. Maybe they're just hedging their bet that he might have to be.
Yeah.
And then they can maybe look at the contract.
I think he will be. I mean, he's still got still fairly young.
Yeah.
Got hands out of the backfield.
Yeah.
So I think overall it's a good sign. Yeah.
Yeah. Good for him.
So.
Good for him. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
What are we going to do at quarterback?
So definitely. So folks, top of the hour. I know it went by fast.
It did go by fast. I didn't realize it.
Yeah, it's only an hour, so.
I was going to give a big shout out to the Patriots. What a great job they've done today, too.
Folks will be back. All right, you got it in there.
There we go.
Yeah. So we'll be back next week, Tuesday, as we do every Tuesday, which is look at the Giants on the same Giants channel, same Giants station.